Hello and welcome back to the series of doing PYQs of social science in the preparation of our seated examination for paper 2. So we were discussing in the last section on July 2024 paper. So we will continue to solve this question paper and see what are some of the important topics when it comes to the social science paper and what kind of pedagogy related and content related questions have come in the social sciences. Let us move on to the first question. Project method in social sciences involves activity, discussion, experiment, narration. So what does project method consist of? So a project method will definitely consist of an activity, it will have discussions and also an experiment. Hence the right answer here would be option 1, A, B and C. So the next question is, the purpose of diagnostic evaluation is to obtain information about learners' characters, get to know about the knowledge students already possess, classify learners into categories to assess the learners. So when you look at diagnostic evaluation is done in order to know specific difficulties that the learners are having or also to learn more about the learners. So the right answer here is option 4, A and B. So both A statement and B statements are true about diagnostic evaluation. Moving on to the next question. A social science teacher asked students to make rules for their class. These were then written on a chart paper and all the students gave their consent to follow these rules. The chart paper was pasted in class so that it can be referred by the students. This can be an introductory activity for which of the following topics. So here this is a more application oriented questions that has come in the seated exam. So in this particular way of dealing with the topic, trying to write various rules and then pasting that chart paper in the class for everyone to have access to and also refer to it time and again. And we also need to understand the key point here is all the students have given their consent to follow these rules. So the options that we have here, which of these topics will be most appropriate? So let us see: diversity, marginalization, democracy and markets. So clearly the right answer here would be democracy. Moving on to the next question. Consider the following statements, assertion and reason in relation to the nature of social science and choose the correct option. The assertion is, the social sciences have developed their own distinct methods for dealing with facts in an objective and systematic way. The reason is, unlike the natural sciences, in social science it is difficult to insulate the observation and analysis of facts from the pressures of popular sentiments. Both of these statements are talking about how does the social sciences develop and how do we actually keep all the facts objective and in a systematic way. So the subject social science itself has its way of dealing with these things. So for it to be objective, it has its own methods. So the right answer here will be the option 1. Both A and R are correct and R is explaining A in the right manner. Moving on to the next question. Which of the following may be used to denote democracy? So this question is on democracy topic. So in this particular question of CTET, the CTET question paper options were not appropriate. So this was actually given as grace marks, but we can still discuss in order to understand the various things about democracy. People are equal and free. People are wealthy and prosperous. People resolve conflicts in a better way than others. Government is more accountable and rational. So the government is accountable, the people are involved and they have rights and also have a lot of freedom. So the right answer of combination here should be A, C and D. The segment B should be removed, but we do not have that as an option here. So this was considered to be a grace marks for everyone. Moving on to the next question. Which of the following questions assesses the analytical aspect of the cognitive process? What are national curricular objectives which can be achieved through heritage project? How are methods of history useful in the research of A. Science, B. Art and management studies? C. In how many regional languages and local dialects Vivid Bharati programs are broadcasted? Write a review on 2 historical serials you have watched. What are Bharuts? In which region or state this is popular? So if you look at it, we are to answer about the analytical aspect of cognitive process. So the direct questions or asking to remember and produce or asking questions related to what are not addressed when it comes to analytical aspects of cognitive process. So the right answer here will be the third option, that is A, B and D are right and are assessing the analytical aspect of cognitive process, and the other options are not. So we will move on to the next question. Which of the following are essential elements of a fair trial? The trial is held in an open court. A copy of charge sheet and all other evidence that the prosecution presents to the court are given to the accused. The defense lawyer is not allowed to cross-examine the prosecution witness. Judges decide the matter on the basis of the statements articulated by lawyers. So, this question is about the essential elements of a fair trial. Everyone has a right to the fair trial. So, for this, which are the essential elements? So, when you look at this, we realize that A, B and D are the essential component, and C, the defense lawyer is not allowed to cross-examine the prosecution witness, is clearly not one of the essential elements. We will move on to the next question. The National Medical Commission's Code of Medical Ethics states that every physician should, as far as possible, prescribe drugs which are called genetic medicines, global brands, generic medicines, ancient remedies. So, the National Medical Commission, it says or advises that the physicians should give generic medicines with the scientific name instead of specifically talking about some of the brands, in order to not promote any brands as such. So the scientific name of the medicine should be given and the combination of it should be given, and that is what the physicians should prescribe. So the right option here will be generic medicines. The next question is, consider the statements A and B and choose the correct option. The natural sciences are superior to social sciences and are the domain of bright students. The social sciences are essential to provide social, cultural, and analytical skills required to adjust to an increasingly independent world. When you look at both of these statements, clearly one of the statement is not true and one is true. So the statement A is false and statement B is true. Let us move on to the next question. Which of the following resources are relevant to discuss the theme of discrimination? The text of Ashokan inscription, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, narrative of B.R. Ambedkar's experiences of looking for a place to stay after returning to India, an advertisement of a woman washing clothes in a commercial. So, the topic that we want to address or the theme that we want to address here is discrimination. So, the narrative of B.R. Ambedkar's experiences. So, after he had returned to India, what was his experience like and how he was discriminated and found it very difficult to get a place to stay. So, the right answer here would be option 3. And if you look at all the other options, they are not addressing the issue of discrimination. Let us move on to the next question. So this question is about match the following. So we have indicators of assessment and which skills and abilities. So let us see what are the various indicators of assessment: discussion, observation, normative concerns and explanation. Let us look at the skills or abilities. Sensitivity towards differently abled, showing concern for environment. making logical connections, reporting, narrating, picture reading and drawing, listening, expressing opinions, and finding out from others. If you look at all of this, you should see that discussion is something which also involves other. So, in which options do we have A and 4? So, there are three options. So, we will first remove option 4 here. Let us now look at the next indicator, that is observation. So what do we do in observation? We try to observe and then we try to report whatever we have understood. And the explanation part of any indicator should be how well you have understood and how well you are able to tell or establish connection. So the right option here is option 1, in which discussion is basically listening, expressing opinions and finding out from others. Observation refers to reporting, narrating, picture reading and drawing. Whereas normative concerns, it talks about the sensitivity towards differently abled and showing concern for the environment and society. Coming to explanation, it talks about making logical connections. So the right answer here is option 1. Moving on to the next question. Lata sells tea at 5 am. She then goes to fetch water from a faraway well. After reaching home, she cooks food, washes clothes, cleans the house, sweeps, and then goes off to purchase items for her tea shop. All this can be referred to as caregiving, double burden, housework, and paid work. So this particular concept of double burden is again repeated in our CTET examination. Hence, it becomes very important for us to understand it well. So double burden is basically when an individual woman is going outside and working and bringing in money and also having to do a lot of household chores. So this creates a lot of burden on her, and hence the correct answer here is double burden. Moving on to the next question. So the next question is, involving teachers is considered important in the development of social science assessment framework to integrate contemporary events and prevailing changes, make curriculum and evaluation only subject centered and to limit its scope, save time, labor and money by using teachers only as a resource, make necessary changes according to the level of teachers by using the experience of the teachers. So here, when you look at these statements, we can easily rule out the statement B, because we do not want to make the evaluation only subject centered and limit its scope. We do not want to limit the scope. We do not want to save time and labor, and that is why involve our teachers. We need our teachers in order to integrate contemporary events and also prevailing changes. So the right answer here is option 1, only statement A. Moving on to the next question. Read the assertion A and reason R statements and choose the correct option. Students should be encouraged to ask questions in the classroom. The reason is it will help the introvert students to open up. Both assertion and reason are true, and reason is the correct explanation of the assertion. Both assertion and reason are true, but R is not the correct explanation of A. A is true, but R is false. Both A and R are false. So when you read this assertion and reason, you would understand that assertion is true, and also one of the reasons as to encouraging students to ask more questions, it will help us to also address all kinds of learners. So the right answer here is both of these statements are correct, and the reason is explaining the assertion. It will definitely help the introvert students to open up. That is why we should encourage the students to ask more questions in the classroom. Moving on to the next question. Fundamental rights and duties of Indian Constitution are written on the walls of social science classroom. This will make children learn primarily through observation, imagination, memorization and reasoning. So the fundamental duties and rights which are listed in our Indian Constitution are pasted in the classroom of a social science class. So when the children are again and again looking at it, how are they learning? Through which particular process are they learning? Which is the correct process skill here? So the right option here is observation, because they will be looking at it again and again. They will observe and also try to retain this whatever they have learned. Moving on to the next one. Which of the following may be acquired by learners in a project work that involves engaging students in authentic real-world problem-solving tasks? The options are development of critical thinking skills, improvement of content knowledge and skills, enhancement of creativity and innovation, promotion of collaboration and teamwork. So when we are talking about project work that is engaging the students in authentic real world problem solving tasks, what kind of skills is it developing? The options that they have presented here are more or less correct, but there is one option which is the major objective as to why we should engage our learners in project work. That is the first option, development of critical thinking skills. That is why it becomes the right answer here. Moving on to the next question. A well-designed portfolio assessment in social sciences should be purposeful and systematic, reflect regular assignments and activities of students, focus mainly on the preparation of report card, accumulation of students' work over a long period of time. So a well-designed portfolio assessment, what will it consist of? So this is also another question on assessment in social sciences. So the right answer here is A, B and D. So the option 4, which talks about purposeful and systematic portfolio assessment, it should be very purposeful, well planned and in a systematic manner, and it should reflect the regular assignments and activities. How the child is progressing should also be reflected in portfolio assessment. And the D option, that is the statement, accumulation of students' work over a long period of time. It does not mainly focuses on the preparation of report card. That is why we will eliminate the statement C. So the right answer here is option 4. Moving on to the next question. Which method would you use to collect information about the actual and correct status of earthquake victims in your area? So there are various methods. So in a situation where an earthquake has occurred, so after the earthquake, how can you actually understand the correct status of the victims in your area? So the options are inquiry method, survey method, project method and problem solving method. So from these 4 options, there is one option which is the most appropriate as to how we can actually find what is the status of the earthquake victims, which is the option 2, survey method. We need to survey and find out what is the correct status of these victims. Moving on to the next question. According to Indian Constitution, this kind of reservation is not a violation of the right to equality. To give special treatment to someone in order to ensure equal opportunity, to ensure jobs of people from states where an elected representative or minister comes from, to ensure jobs based on nepotism, to give jobs to close kith and kin of political leaders. So, if you read all of these options, we can easily make out most of these options as soon as we read outrightly are wrong and are not the intention of having reservation rights. So, if you see, there is only one option which is the correct option here, that is option 1. So, according to Indian Constitution, if the reservation is given to give special treatment to someone in order to ensure that they have equal opportunity, it is not violating the right of equality. We will now move on to the next question. Which of the following provides scope to develop critical thinking skills? So here now we are discussing the critical thinking skills in social sciences. So what role did the Yamuna play in the layout of the Mughal city at the Shahjahanabad? What is the purpose of press conference? How does the press conference help you get information on what government is doing? Differentiate markets with illustrative examples. It is necessary for the civil servants to be politically neutral. Explain. Availability of water is a major factor affecting the settlement pattern. Discuss. So, there are various kinds of situations and questions which they have given here, and they are trying to address various components of social sciences and various lessons that we come across in our NCERT textbooks. So, it is very important for us to thoroughly go through the NCERT texts. So, coming back to our question, we need to only specifically see which are providing scope of development for critical thinking. So the right answer here will not include what. It will talk about how, why, those kinds of things. So the right answer here is option 3, A, B, D and E only. So the C statement is not developing critical thinking skills. Moving on to the next question. A large number of people in rural India who are landless, although their main livelihood source is agriculture, are called as marginal farmers, migrant laborers, agricultural laborers and small farmers. So what do we call these individual who are from the rural India who are landless but their main occupation is agriculture? That is their source of living. So let us look at the options. A and B only, B and C only, A, B and C only, and B, C and D only. So the right answer here is B and C. They are called as the migrant laborers and also agricultural laborers. We will now move on to the next question. The ideas of liberty, equality and fraternity of the Indian Constitution are borrowed from American Revolution, French Revolution, Russian Revolution and Magna Carta. So our Indian Constitution has taken or borrowed various ideas from constitutions around the globe, and the right answer from the particular revolution from whom we have taken liberty, equality and fraternity, it comes from the French Revolution. Moving on to the next question. Which of the following should be considered as gender neutral atmosphere in a school? The statements are: a group of girls are making rangoli, a group of boys are volunteering in annual function, a group of girls are preparing for dance competition, and D, a group of boys are arranging refreshment for guests. So we are here to talk about which of it is gender neutral atmosphere, which is not highlighting a stereotype or a bias or a prejudice against anyone. So here the right option is B and D. So here the right option is statement B and D, that is option 4. So a group of boys are volunteering in annual function is a gender neutral atmosphere, and also a group of boys are arranging for refreshment for guests. Now let us move on to the next question. Which region in India has the highest concentration of Adivasi communities? Is it North India, South India, East India or West India? So this is a direct question based on where the Adivasi communities are located. So the right answer here is the East of India. Moving on to the next question. Consider the following statements and choose the correct option. Statement A. Investment in non-farm activity in rural areas can reduce the rural-urban migration. Statement R. Migration increases during particular season when there are no agricultural activities in rural areas. So we need to see both of these statements individually and also see if R is explaining the statement 1 properly. So if you have read the options carefully here, you would have understood that the statement 1, it is talking about the migration. And the statement 2 is also talking about migration, but it is discussing how migration increases in a particular season when there is no agricultural activity happening in the rural India, the number of people migrating increases. So the right option here is both of these statements are true and the reason explains the assertion correctly. Let us now move on to the next question. A teacher wants to divide 30 students of her class in small groups for a task on diversity. Which will be the most relevant way to make small groups of students? So this is also a question related to pedagogy. So let us see what are the options. As per students' comfort, bench-wise from front to back, according to students' marks in last exam from high to low, heterogeneous random groups based on a game. So whenever we are doing an activity in the class and we want to do group division, and we have to make sure that the diversity remains intact, and for that what strategy the teacher can use, which will be the most appropriate one here. So if we are using and trying to give options or checking the comfort of the students, that is not the right way. We cannot always do bench wise from front to back, and we cannot divide the student based on their marks. So the right answer here would be heterogeneous random groups based on a game. Moving on to the next question. Which one of the following statements accurately reflect the concept of plurality in social science curriculum? Choose the correct option. So plurality of the social science curriculum is also one of the key aspects here. So let us see what are the options. Dominance of a single ideology, inclusion of multiple perspectives and diverse viewpoints, exclusion of certain perspectives from social science, and option 4, use of complex language in social science curriculum materials. So when you read the options, you can remove certain options directly, and also there is one option which is most appropriate and what it means when it is coming to plurality in social sciences. So it should have an inclusion of multiple or plural kind of ideologies and perspective and viewpoints. So the right answer here is option 2, inclusion of multiple perspectives and diverse viewpoints. Moving on to the next question, and this is the final question in our PYQs from July paper. Let us see. The Constitution determines the relationship among people living in a territory called citizen and also dash. So the options here are relationship among people and corporates, relationship among neighboring countries, relationship among people and government, and relationship among neighboring countries and the government. So the Constitution, it determines the relationship among people living in a territory and called citizen. And also, so what will be the right option here? The third option, that is the relationship among people and the government. So with this, we have come to the end of solving PYQs from July 2024. There were certain major topics that we need to understand and always revisit these topics from social science. PYQs are one of the best ways to prepare for your CTET examination. This helps you to understand what are the varieties of questions that will come in an examination and what are some of the repeated topics that are coming in social sciences. So make sure to go through our NCERT textbooks, make sure to solve more and more papers, and also remember some of the keywords which will help you solve the questions quickly. With this, we come to the end of our video. Thank you so much and all the best for your CTET examination.